we're gonna move on to fixture congestions and how it could impact the future of football and football right now or soccer right now, because I know we do have majority Canadian. I'm sorry. Uh, when you watch too much like Premier League and everything, you love to say football and everything. So if I do say
That's
football,
fair. That's fair.
I do apologize all my Canadian viewers that are so used to saying
Just name it
soccer.
Football Worldwide, and I'm Yorku. I said nice, but yeah.
Exposed. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. So fixture congestion and impact related to football and everything. Um, to be honest, when they were doing the whole scheduling and everything, and Gary Neville actually pointed it out. There wasn't particularly much change to the schedule, in terms of like spacing the games and everything, right? However, now we're seeing more games being postponed because of people having like COVID, a large amount in their team having COVID and everything, and now they have to like reconfigure like the fixtures and everything. And with the Euros coming soon and everything, do you think this can pose a massive issue in terms of like players being able to play and whatnot and able to keep that intensity?
You know what I think it is. So like I watch a bunch of sports, so I'm gonna relate, like compare that to like other sports. For example, basketball, hockey. I think in soccer we are stuck in this mentality that we need to have a certain amount of games in a specific season. Like the Premier League will force themselves to have, I don't know what the number is, but like 34, 35 games in a season.
38.
Like that's
Yeah.
or 38.
Of
Like that's your
14.
full season.
Mhm.
Like in especially like a year like this in the past, like with COVID, like you've seen the NBA and NHL shorten their seasons. Like they went from like 84 games a season till now like 54. Why can't the Premier League cut down from, you don't have to cut down that much, just go from 38 to 30. That way you're spaced out a bit more, and like at the end of the day, you're still gonna have a winner. You're still gonna have a bottom team. Like I don't think those 8 games necessarily make such a big difference, especially like watching last year where Liverpool were so far ahead. Like
Mhm.
you kind of understand who's gonna win the season when you jump into that later like 25, 27 games, right?
I'm
So
Let
gonna.
me.
I want to
Oh,
counter it, and then I'll let
okay.
Mitch talk as well. But I think I'm gonna go with the similar points and everything. The thing is, though, there's this old school mentality that once you start something, you should finish it, and I think a lot of the Premier League supporters rather have, that amount of games. The reason why the NBA has to cut off games is there's just too many games in the regular season, in my opinion, and I have my gripes with that, and I think they should have maybe a division system and everything. But however, it's pretty much not going to work with the NBA because they have that certain like ideology and everything. But with the Premier League and with like all the other leagues, they rather see all the games to be completed and to have a full season on. So then that way they don't have to put like these kind of like, oh, this was an exception and whatnot and everything, right? With the whole PSG situation, I think people were okay. Although I think a lot of people in the French league would have absolutely detested that because they rather have like a full season where, it was won fairly and everything, right? And same with the Premier League. That's why they were pushing for all these games to finish and whatnot, even in the Champions League and whatnot. And I think a lot of people, international fans, would rather see they play the full season when possible. They don't mind particularly delaying it and everything, but they want to see the whole season finish the whole, so at least they can say like, right, it finished fairly. Otherwise, there would be a lot more controversy about like finishing. Otherwise, you should have. And they didn't want the season to end. They still wanted the season to continue regardless and everything, right? But I understand like in terms of like the financial aspect and everything, in terms of like that's another thing as well. Finances, right? If you cut off games, you're losing a large portion of money. While in the NBA, not everybody's going to particularly watch like all the games and everything. People are going to cut down on certain games that are least important, right? So you're losing a large revenue stream on that aspect as well.
that's true, but
Go
sure.
ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to counter that. Like I feel like the NBA and NHL and stuff, they did that to sort of like damage limitation almost in terms of like player injuries and stuff like that. Like in the NBA, we haven't seen anywhere close. Like think about the amount of teams there are in the NBA and then compare them to the Premier League. And we haven't seen anywhere close to the amount of injuries that have occurred in the NBA in their shortened season, but still spaced out, versus the Premier League in their congested season. I think like people are so stuck in that mentality where it's these old guys who are running the football is a business, and are not really thinking about it from an individual or like player sort of perspective. Like I think it's very hard. Like if you look at like the Premier League itself have been like ruined by like injuries, like like Liverpool especially. Like you guys are missing like all of your defense now, and that's because of, you could say, fixture congestion, where like unlike the NBA, like with soccer, you still have to play your international competitions. Like I just don't understand that. Like people want to play games, but then they're forgetting that the people are getting injured by it. So,
Mitch, you want to add something to this?
I mean, like, kind of to try to for reference, how many NBA teams are there?
There's like 32.
So, so like for example, for the Premier League, they make the schedule off of playing one game at your stadium and playing one game away from home at each of the other teams. So how would they cut the season down? Because I know kind of now it's not the same because there's no fans watching it, so the atmosphere kind of changes, and the influence that fans have on the game specifically. Let's say you go Burnley away, the fans make a really big difference than being in the stadium. So that's an important fixture for Burnley themselves, rather than being at their other person's stadium. So like, how would they cut down specific fixtures so that we could have a shortened season?
And I do want to add on to this as well. You look at the clubs and everything, who aren't like financially strong as some of the big leagues and everything. They actually rely on actually airing their games just to make that money and everything. Cutting the games for them is going to damage their clubs immensely and everything, right? And I do agree with like the whole like they're stuck in their ways and everything, which is why I think the Euros actually should be moved, because like I said, they have this mentality where once they start something, they should end something, right? But if you stop something from starting, then it should be okay and everything. And I'm a huge, I actually made this thing up, but I actually didn't like go through with it, flex it, kind of like Brexit and everything, but pretty much like football for the Euros anyways, because one thing is you're gonna have the Euros, right? And then after that you're gonna have the World Cup, which again, it's gonna, I think, ruin a lot of things. Of course they're gonna have like apparently in Qatar they're gonna have like air conditioning and everything, but just like playing those international tournaments as well is gonna be immensely damaged and everything. And I actually did a little bit of research when it comes to like the physiological effects and everything. They don't particularly have enough data right now at the moment to decipher like why and the main causes, but some of the things that they do say is like the intensity to continue, like you know that we had like once the Premier League ended, right, they had to start the season right away, right? So a lot of teams,
they had like 2 weeks break or something like that.
Yeah, so pretty much they had like a little bit of time to rest, and then they had to get back to that certain intensity levels to start off again and everything, right? And that is very difficult in football and everything, because like physiologically speaking, a lot of players are used to getting back into shape at a certain like timeline and everything, so they could be like match fit and ready, right? But to condense that amount of time, right, they gotta have to make the more like the prep training more intense and everything, which physiologically a lot of players are not particularly used to at that point in time.
Thivian, I want to add on to your point, like in terms of that, like would you say that the lack of preseason as well as this congested fixture list can be the reason for like a lot of the injuries and for a lot of the injuries?
Yeah, I think 100%. Like football is a very intense sport that needs like first one mentally one thing, physically another, and like so many things as well. I understand with basketball, like you know they have to play like back-to-back fixtures, but to play a full 90 minutes with that intensity and everything, and if you don't properly prep yourself physically, you're gonna have those like hamstring issues. You're gonna have like a lot of like body issues and everything and whatnot, right? So then, especially, and that's why they actually said like the 5 subs. A lot of the big teams suggested that because they were worried more about like injuries related stuff, not particularly like to get an advantage. That was their argument, right? And you look at teams like Sheffield United, for example, who are absolutely struggling right now, and they would want, like, with injuries and whatnot, if they had maybe a little bit more. I know they don't have the biggest squads and everything, but even with the injuries issues they had, like towards the tail end of the season, they were still able to bring like new people to come in and everything, right? So having like, just in case if you're looking for potential injury, it's a good thing to particularly have that as well. They did like the 5s. They did have like 2 extra subs for like concussions and everything, but why not have it for like, for injury related stuff just in case?
Yeah, they should have it. Like, also the Champions League has it as well. So I don't see why like the Premier League and other leagues are not able to do the same.
Reza, what are your thoughts on this? I see you being quite a bit quiet.
Yeah. I was gonna mention a point about like how this fixture congestion kind of affects international football, and just by looking at the Bundesliga, you can see that they have less teams in each division. So they have 18 teams compared to the Premier League, which has 20 teams in like the first division. So that allows for less games, and they give an extended break during wintertime to their players and to all the teams, so that they have more time to prepare and freshen up for the second half of the season. And in the long run, it helps you prepare for tournaments like the Euros, the World Cup, even like other continental tournaments for the players.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. Like, the Premier League is one of the few leagues that actually doesn't have a break and everything, right? So you look at like some of the other, I think in Serie A they also have a break during the middle of the season as well, where they do have that break. They're like, right, you know what, you gotta mentally rest and everything, and maybe that's why they particularly do better in like international tournaments as well with that certain break and everything. The Premier League, they're like, right, you know what, we care about the money and everything, we need to perform at that point and everything, right? Of course, it does give the Premier League to end quicker and everything. But you look at, for example, like Champions League finals and everything, right? Like, the Prem sides would have like a longer break and everything to like wait and everything, where in that game time they could actually, prep better and everything. I just think that the Premier League should install. That's why a lot of like international coaches, they're quite baffled when they come in. They're like, why is there like an extended? It took Klopp time to actually get used to that as well, because he didn't particularly like the idea. He liked the way that there was a break and everything. And that's the thing as well, right? When you change the structure of how the league goes and everything that drastically, it's going to lead to issues like this.
Yeah.
And apparently, like... Yeah.
What is the current issue are we talking about? Sorry, I had to go for dinner.
No. It's all good, man. We were talking about like fixture congestions and how it could impact the future of football and everything.
Right. Okay.
What do you guys think about? Sorry.
Yeah. Go ask a question. Go ahead.
What do you guys think about like having that midway like water break between the halves? Because personally, for me, like I initially liked the idea. But then I didn't like having the idea of having like a quote unquote tactics break. But overall, I thought it was like it was very like crucial to that end of the season, like after the lockdown. But what would you think about implementing it in this season with the fixture congestion and everything?
I felt like at the moment, because they were just coming off of a couple months break and being directly put into playing these intense fixtures week in, week out, that the water break was actually a good idea. But then as we saw as the games went on and the players built up a little bit more fitness, match fitness, you could see they didn't really need to take these water breaks, and they're kind of like hindering the games themselves. So it wasn't really crucial at the time. So like it kind of comes and goes with the current world issues.
It also had to do that many of these leagues were being resumed in the peak of like summer, Like
Yeah.
normally these guys wouldn't be playing in like your July, August, or June when it's really hot in like England and places like that. Like we've seen it during the regular leagues, like regular season without COVID. That if it's a really hot day, they do have the water breaks, and I think that's why they probably needed it to like help people to get back into proper fitness, but also because it was really hot outside.
Mhm.
So
Okay. So
And
it's
also,
more of a weather thing.
that was the first time that's the first time where they were playing between these months because of the COVID break, and also the long break. They didn't have so much exposure to these tense games, like Mitchell said earlier. But you know what? It's fine if you do it for a few weeks until the players get settled in for the hot days and the break. Then when they start getting back to their normal form, it it hinders the natural flow of the game. Like you don't get to complete your 45 minutes of uninterrupted play, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need that 45 minutes of uninterrupted play, or else these sort of disruptions can hinder the game.
Yes, for sure.
You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
I do want to also like put out the stat. Apparently, in the Premier, or at least in the Premier League, there's like a 30% increase in terms of injuries and everything. But do you think this trend is gonna increase as like when we play like international football and then like the World Cup as well?
Oh yeah,
Um,
100%.
maybe.
Because oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe the injuries during these international breaks, the main problem with international breaks right now is either the COVID problem or the injury problem. Like we have already seen many players getting injured due to friendlies. Who wants to get their main players injured due to friendlies? We don't want that to happen, right? And World Cup, Euros get more intense and intense. So when the games get more intense, there is a lot of injuries, and the players are expected to perform higher. So that's why they're more prone to injuries. Maybe hamstring pulls, muscle tears. Those are the main features of the injuries than breaking a leg or something. These are the main causes. Even a small hamstring pull could end. The player could be out for a few more weeks, months, something like that.
That's
You
Yeah.
get what I mean?
that's very interesting. Mitch, you wanted to say something as well?
Yeah, so with the international breaks, I already felt that they were kind of like pointless to in a sense. Like I understand if it's for qualifying for an important major tournament, but like just playing friendlies for your nation, like I don't really see the point of it. And they've kind of changed it so like there's less friendlies with the inclusion of the Nations Cup, but just having that like those breaks so that they can go play for 2 weeks with their national team. Like I don't really understand what the point of it is.
I agree with the notion. I for the international friendlies, obviously they do put it out because like to get the chemistry with the team and everything. But I
Yeah,
do
yeah, for
understand
sure.
that point of like there's already the Nation League and everything. So why do you want to put like other stuff in between if that's the case and everything? So wouldn't the Nations League also like be like that kind of international? And I get at least this time around there shouldn't be or at least international friendlies and whatnot, because like the fixture congestion and everything, and like I don't think a lot of people like they don't care for international friendlies. Like it's not going to generate a lot of money either. So I mean,
Yeah, the Nations League was supposed to replace international friendlies, so
yeah.
kind
So
of
right.
quite redundant. But I mean, there is the point of like chemistry.
Yeah.
The main issues with these is fatigue. Main issues with all these Nations League friendlies, and it's more fatigue, which leads to your player degrading in the main league, in the Premier League, or if he's into Champions League or Europa League. Maybe fatigue is the main problem with players. the more games you make them play, the more congested their fixture is. Like, look, if you take somebody like Leicester, think about James Madison. He plays for England. He plays in the Europa League, and if they are into any FA Cup or EFL Cup fixtures, he play for that as well, and the Premier League. And you know how intense Premier League is in the first place, right? And then if you go to an England team, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of competition in England team. So he needs to. There is competition with Mason Mount right now, Jack Grealish. So he's expected to do better, more better. So when you expect them to do more better, they put in more hard work, which in turn it turns into fatigue, which can lead the player to degrade and maybe get injured. Even the smallest injury can lead to bigger consequences. You get what I mean?
No, I completely understand and everything.
Yeah. You know what I think it is though? Like, I don't think I agree with like getting rid of the friendlies though, because I feel like on a personal level also, like for the players, it's such a huge honor to represent your national team. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the World Cup or like some friendly, like just putting on the shirt or getting that call up is just so important to players. I think really what it should be though is increase the squad size. Like what Akilesh was talking about competition, because right now when you go to your international tournaments, like right now every team, I don't know what the number is, but I'm pretty sure it's around 25 or 26 players that you have to take. Why not increase that size to maybe like a 35? That way a smaller player who would not really be called into the national team gets this huge opportunity to go to a World Cup. And for example, if there is an injury, then for example, if it's England, Gareth Southgate now gets to choose amongst a whole nother set of players that he probably wouldn't have looked at before. And I think that also helps, like playing those kind of smaller, like lesser players in friendlies or the Nations League, and then saving your Rashfords and your Harry Kanes for the real like World Cup finals moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think just keep the international fixtures, just like make the squads bigger, just call up more guys.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I want to add something regarding like keeping international friendlies, because if you look at countries like, say, I don't know, England or even Spain, there are certain players where they come from the lower teams. So from like Leicester a couple of years ago, when I think David Nugent was called up to England, and I don't know, even Danny Ings when he was called up to England when he played for I think Burnley before or Southampton. It's an opportunity for these guys to get exposure to that, level of playing. So if you take out international friendlies, they won't be able to get that exposure, and it would be less likely for them to, land a spot in a World Cup team or a World Cup squad in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also people tend to forget, like, we right now are probably talking, like, in keeping the teams in mind that do have a lot of international fixtures throughout the year, like your England, Germany, Spain. But I think it's, like, as a Canadian soccer fan, too, like, I can compare, like, Canada has barely any games in a year, or even, like, 4 years, like, compared to your other bigger teams where they are playing in the Euro Cups and stuff. So these international friendlies are so important to those other teams, like that are like in Europe and not teams that do so well internationally, the ones that kind of do get limited time to build their squads and get chemistry and get their players together. So I think, I don't think getting rid of international games is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. Like teams like
But do
these
you think they're
Caribbean
necessary
islands.
in this year?
Yeah, of course. I think like any chance you get, like people forget, like we have World Cup qualifiers have started already. Like I know Canada has a camp in January because they're expected to play qualifiers in March. So
okay, I want to ask this then. Do you think that because you want more exposure within squad depth and everything, do you think that managers should have less pressure on like putting like more experienced players on like those international friendlies? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that make the decisions on who comes in and who doesn't, right? So then do you think that managers should be more encouraged to like bring more of like up and coming talent rather than more experience established during this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It gives them a chance to shine, and like going back to the point about Danny Ings and David Nugent before, like if a guy like I don't know, say like Wayne Rooney back then gets injured and is about to miss the World Cup, you have these backup choices that are emerging as well proven players, like the Premier League, and maybe they can bring some magic to a tournament like the Euros or even the World Cup.
All right. And another question I want to impose as well. So we see with all this thing, everything that's happening right now with the whole like uptick in injuries and everything and whatnot. Do you think now it's the perfect time to do way more research and to see how can we tackle these like issues and try to alleviate less of these like problems in the future? And AJ, since you came on right now, you want to answer the question?
Which problems? I don't know what you mean. Like, is it like hamstring injuries or like?
So pretty much
Weird.
the main focus is of course fixture congestion and how it's impacting like football right now. So that's kind of like the train of thought we are at the moment.
But what problem are you specifically like asking about?
Oh, asking about? Okay, so pretty much the thing I imposed was what is
Like,
it?
what needs to be researched? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, the researching part. So like how there's so many injuries right now with the whole fixture congestion thing and everything, right? But we don't particularly know like the main issues and the reasoning, right? According to the research studies I've seen as well, apart from like the amount of time and everything. So I'm asking like, should there be more research put into it now, so then that way we can tackle these issues later on in the future?
I mean, yeah, but even before with any like around the festive period, always I think most of the time there's a lot of injuries, right? Because the festive period, at least in the Premier League, you're playing like 5-6 games in December. I remember Liverpool won one year. I think it was 2019. We had 9 games in December, and I don't know. There's squad depth and whatever, but when Liverpool wasn't as like deep of a squad, we used to fall off in January every single year, and it was because of that lack of
Squad depth.
like rest in between.
And
So I'm for sure you can go through research, but I'm sure like these are like huge organizations, Premier League clubs, right? I'm sure there's already research going on before.
I don't
the
think
COVID pandemic as well.
particularly there's research during like I mean with COVID and everything, right? And how that's going to impact them as well. And you got to understand as well. That's another
That's
thing as
true.
well. Like COVID of itself, that's also an unknown variable when it comes to like players' performances and everything, right? Some players particularly
It's
don't do
true.
well after they recover from COVID and everything, and some players
True.
they do better. So is that maybe another
I
issue
mean,
that?
if it's something that's hitting your like, I mean, COVID for a lot of people, they have symptoms in their lungs, right?
Mhm.
And I think United threw Pogba back like a week after he recovered from COVID, and his form was horrible, right? Like he was
Yeah.
destroyed on Twitter like weekly for stuff like that, and you have to give more time for recovery for sure.
Same with like Kai Havertz, but he had like he had a lot more time because his symptoms were more serious. So yeah,
Yeah.
And that's a club
Right.
decision as well. Like the clubs are the ones that determine like okay when a player is good or not, right? And I do think maybe more of like they should. I know they have like the 14 days and everything, right? But they should determine like okay, based on how they're performing right now and everything, they should have like a set in stone kind of like thing. I know it's just like right now and everything. It's never like possibly gonna happen again, but I think good research when it comes to this should be like warranted. I mean, like especially if
I think it's like, sorry.
Thivian, when you ask like about research and stuff, are you indicating like are you just saying about like injuries, or are you trying to say like during this whole COVID like pandemic, should we like kind of address like should clubs address like not just injuries but like a whole bunch of other issues so that when we have the full restart and are completely back to normal, it's a more polished product? Is that what you're asking, or is it just more like research and injuries?
Well, I mean, like, when you research, like, certain aspects to the game and everything, right, you'll be prepared more so you can kind of relate, like, okay, let's say a similar situation happens like this again, and then you can look at that, it's like, okay, now we have our research. Because back in the day, we didn't research about many stats and everything, and I think that's the reason why we had the whole, like, they changed the brand and everything because to keep stats, in play, right? Because before, yes, you kept a couple of stats, but it's not as in-depth as it is right now where they have more, like, research towards it, right? So then that's pretty much kind of like, I guess, polishing the idea and, like, looking into, like, certain aspects of it. Anybody has any final remarks related to, like, fixture congestions and how it may impact the future of football?
I'll go for it. So if you look at the fixture congestions, in considering the whatnot, the league and the EFL Cup, FA Cups and stuff, it's usually that one thing that's advised to the boards that they have a lot of players in their team, right? They have a lot of reserve players and stuff, so they can have an alternative squad for an FA Cup with only a few important players. That I think most of them do that, but I encourage them to do that more, so that the main players, the people who they consider more, so they can be in the substitute bench or the reserves, so that they don't get the fatigue, and the reserve players get more time to play. So there's a balance between the games, and they don't feel congested.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, I love the topics that are being discussed and everything, but we got to move on to the next kind of topic and everything. If you guys want to continue the discussion and everything related to this topic, please comment down below in the comments below. I appreciate y'all.